Hello and welcome back to the official Super Bowl halftime show tier list. As a bit of a refresher, at this point in Super Bowl history, we've ranked 22 shows, and the tiers are looking something like this. Our feet are planted firmly in the 2010s now, after we just checked The Who in for an indefinite stay in the retirement home tier, for bringing an end to the era of aging rock stars headlining the Super Bowl. But with all of that said, as is the case with many of life's biggest changes, sometimes things have to get worse before they can get better. The Black Eyed Peas are younger and have far more LED lights than previous acts, but they certainly don't sound any better. Anytime you notice audio mixing during a show, the techs have failed at their job, but with this mess, it's legitimately all you can think about. It almost sounds like they planned the entire time to lip sync, but then the sound guy got nervous and accidentally switched their mics on at the last second. The sound isn't the only poor mark here, though. For being militant partiers, there is absolutely zero energy. This is supposed to be the youth resurgence, but they're choreographed like Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. At one point, Slash emerges from the stage, and Fergie just completely ruins the moment by walking over to him. Usher appears and does a split, which at least shows some initiative, but the train wreck is far beyond saving at this point. The insane amount of colored lights definitely looked cooler then than it does now, but I guarantee you after this, the executives were frighteningly close to throwing youth in the trash and just booking the Eagles for 2012. F tier for the Black Eyed Peas. So now we're at a crossroads. Aging rockers have exhausted their welcome, and their pop superstar replacement was somehow worse. Well, f*** it, let's try an aging pop superstar. From the visuals and choreography of this show alone, you can tell Madonna actually understands what people expect at the Super Bowl, and I think this performance actually kicks off a golden age of halftime shows. She obviously should have landed this gig decades earlier, but even in her 50s, she's got energy. There's a gymnastics routine, guy bouncing on a tightrope over here, LMFAO is carrying Madonna around on their shoulders. Point is, it's fun, which I think is a good road to take with these mini shows. That said, I think the act peaks early and is probably one of the rare instances where the quality decreases as more guest appearances are made. But hey, CeeLo Green has a funny hat on, and MIA flashes a middle finger that NBC couldn't censor in time, so there is that. In all, I'd say this one stands out as one of the best looking halftime shows, and I'd say it still earns high marks across the rest of the board. We'll go with the B tier. That brings us to 2013.
Superdome. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see.
Within the first few minutes, it's clear this show is in very rare territory. There's just so many insane visuals like this one, or this one, or this one, and Beyoncé gives the greatest hybrid performance of vocals and dancing in the show's history. Things open up with a Vince Lombardi voiceover about excellence to set the stage, and then you get a non-stop barrage of Beyoncé's hits. Even if you aren't a fan of her music, which I'm not really even personally, it is impossible to ignore just how much intensity this performance has. Midway through, the other members of Destiny's Child are catapulted to the stage for a quick cameo, and after Single Ladies, Halo caps off one of the greatest halftime shows of all time. This is another one that I recommend watching in full if you haven't already. Definitely up in S tier for me. 2014 had a hell of an act to follow, but we are finally back at the point in Super Bowl history where headlining feels like a big deal again. We kick things off with Bruno on the limited edition motorized drum set, and I think this is a fresh and unique way to open things up. And once he finds his way to the stage, he rolls through some of the hits from his early albums that fit for the more traditional and sleek concert vibe he's going for. Bruno wasn't quite the megastar he is now back in February 2014, so we are looking at a more limited catalog. But I can't begrudge the man for landing the damn Super Bowl early in his career. What is he gonna do, turn it down? Something I can begrudge, though, are the Red Hot Chili Peppers being shoehorned in as the guest, because seeing them jump around shirtless for Give It Away right before Bruno closes with a montage of the Troops and Just the Way You Are is definitely weird and unnecessary.
This song goes out to my beautiful bride, Nikki.
Overall, we'll put Bruno in the low B tier. Next up, we land in 2015 with Katy Perry, and at this point, the format is really hitting its stride with another of the biggest pop stars in the world. This is another show that's just a ton of fun. Katy Perry is obviously not the same level of performer as a Beyoncé or an MJ, but she really seems to understand that. She just lets her rainbow set and list of #1 hits be the real star of the show. There's obviously the left shark that forgets the routine he spent weeks memorizing as soon as the cameras roll, but let's not forget the other ridiculous moments like this gigantic metal lion she enters in on, or the shooting star platform on which she exits off into the night sky. There's also guest appearances from Lenny Kravitz and Missy Elliott, and while Katy Perry and Missy Elliott have about zero crossover in any aspect of their careers, I thought her performance managed to be one of the best parts of the show. We've talked a good amount about the balance between concert and spectacle when it comes to halftime shows, and I think this is the best of the full-on spectacles we've seen thus far. I'm gonna go ahead and place Katy Perry in the A tier. Moving on to 2016 brings us Coldplay, and to this day, I still have no idea whether this was a good or bad idea to have them headline. Alright, I mean, it's not particular to this show, but I've just gotta say it. Ever since halftime shows have become commonly done in a darkened stadium, any show that's performed on the West Coast is automatically handicapped by the fact that the sun is out. Obviously, you're not going to start the Super Bowl at 10 p.m. Eastern, but also you can't tell me that these kaleidoscope props or anything lighting related wouldn't look 100 times better if it was actually dark in the stadium. With that said, Coldplay isn't even really the headliner here. They're definitely fine, but they also chose to feature recent Super Bowl performers that both put on much more compelling shows then and now. Bruno now has Uptown Funk and a lot more energy, and Beyoncé now has Formation and a team of dancers that are dressed like Black Panthers. So after these two share the stage together, Chris Martin and Coldplay come back, and you completely forgot that they were even there in the first place. Everything closes out with a sappy montage of past halftime shows, and I don't really have any complaints. There's just a quality to it that definitely feels disjointed with the three acts. If I was only grading Coldplay here, we'd probably land in C. But Beyoncé and Bruno have the majority of the initials, so naturally they carry it up to B tier. Moving on to 2017, we continue to see the boundaries pushed forward for what a halftime show can look like. The opening for this performance is just straight up insane. You've got Lady Gaga on top of NRG Stadium in Houston, singing patriotic songs with hundreds of drones forming the American flag behind her, and then she jumps off the roof. Once she hits the floor, though, you get one of the single greatest demonstrations of stamina in halftime history. Gaga's ability to belt out her hits while doing these high-speed jumping jacks is just insane, and you can tell they knew they had something special because there's nothing needed to distract as eye candy here, when it's already electric on its own. At this point, it was long overdue that Lady Gaga be recognized as more than just publicity stunts, and this show absolutely solidified that. 13.5 minutes of insane choreography and vocal talent. Whether or not you're a fan of her, there's just no denying that. Guitar solo, costume changes, acrobatics between numbers, and closing things out by logging the first reception of the second half. Lady Gaga's performance earns her a spot at the top of the A tier. 2018's halftime show would aim to keep this insane run alive by bringing back a disgraced performer for his third appearance. This time, though, he's headlining.
Bringing sexy back. Them other boys don't know how to act.
There's plenty you can say about the decision to bring Timberlake back, and people have, but I think the most offensive thing about this performance is just how deeply inoffensive it really is. Obviously, JT needed to play it safe to an extent, and he is a technically sharp performer, but everything here is just so sterilized that I end up feeling nothing in the end. I'm sorry, Justin, but it absolutely is. I remember thinking that this was pretty okay at the time, and I still mostly do, but it's definitely disappointing because Timberlake is a way better performer than this show really demonstrates. Oh, and I forgot to mention, for the entire show, Timberlake's mic is just way quieter than it should be. It's not his fault, but it's symbolic. The Prince tribute is a nice touch in his hometown, but I really feel like a goldfish every time I watch this performance, because it's already gone from my mind the moment it ends. Oh, well, except for this part.
Super Bowl selfies.
C tier. Now, for the show many people have been waiting for, or probably just skipped to in the video chapters. Before the show even started, it got substantial heat after multiple artists turned down the gig in solidarity with Colin Kaepernick, so much so that the league canceled the press conference leading up to it. But Adam Levine and the other members of Maroon 5 that are totally real people decided they were going to completely shift the conversation by putting on the most boring halftime show of all time. Look, Levine has been phoning it in for a decade now, and this is no different. His eyes legitimately look like he's fighting through sleeping pills, but at least we get confirmation he's singing live because he does miss some notes from time to time. Tons of people were holding out for an appearance of Sweet Victory from SpongeBob after the passing of creator Steven Hillenburg, and while they sort of half-commit with an intro, we ultimately just end up with the second most tragic performance of Travis Scott's career. Okay, maybe I'm being just a little harsh, but after watching through this multiple times, I can genuinely say I'd rather watch Travis Scott fall off the stage with auto-tune than hear him rap without it. Big Boy drives into Rep Atlanta, but at this point he really should have just reversed back into the locker rooms, and the whole thing comes to a sad end with Adam Levine writhing around shirtless. No one really knows why. I mean, look into his eyes. He doesn't know why either. But he's stuck doing it at this point, and you're stuck watching it. We're gonna place Maroon 5 in a purgatory devoid of human emotion. So now that we've ventured through 30 years of halftime shows, we've finally reached our current decade. And while you may not have the highest opinion of the 2020s so far, this show is actually a lot of fun. At age 43 and 50 respectively, Shakira and J-Lo have zero issue injecting the energy that has been desperately needed in the halftime show. Shakira is on 3 different instruments all over the stage. She even crowd surfs during Hips Don't Lie. J-Lo shows off some family-friendly pole dancing, and homages are made to the cultures they're proud to represent. Bad Bunny and J Balvin also make appearances, and they're forgettable, but they do fit. The entire production is really just focused on keeping the energy as high as possible here, and as a result, the show feels more like a celebration than just a performance. Overall, I think that goes a long way in carrying this one up near the top of the A tier. 2021 is up next for us, and I guess we'll spare the context for afterwards. Okay, so it would be massively unfair to not mention that this show is the first and most heavily affected by COVID regulations. Because of that, it's also the first show to have its majority performed on one of the stadium concourses, meaning not here, but up here. For this reason, it's clear the show is set up to translate more to the broadcast and not necessarily those in the stadium, which I guess is understandable, but it doesn't make it any less weird.
Hey, turn around. They're actually over there.
I do really enjoy this show, though. The things that it lacks as a live performance are actually kind of strengths when you're viewing it as just a YouTube video. It's heavily choreographed and stylistic, so the lighting and aesthetic is gorgeous, and if you pretend there's no audience, then it's really just like a trippy dystopian music video, which is cool. The Weeknd does eventually come down to center field as well, but because he's like 4 stories up, it takes almost a full minute to get him down there. Personally, I like to imagine that he was just absolutely hauling ass past the concession stands before jogging out to do blinding lights. No guest appearances though, so it really depends if you enjoy The Weeknd's music or not, but for being dealt the worst possible hand, his performance is unique and memorable. So for that reason, for me, it goes in the B tier. Now this video is being released in the year of our Lord 2022, so that means for now, we have reached the end of a long line of great and not so great halftime shows. So really, it only makes sense for us to close things out with a throwback.
It's the one and only Dre.
Dr. Dre, you little busters.
This lineup is absolutely loaded with legends of rap music to try and make up for the fact that somehow there had never been an actual hip-hop centric headliner in the entire history of the Super Bowl. But despite the insane amount of stars here, it actually manages to balance all of them out and never really feels overcrowded. We are in LA, so this show does suffer from looking like it was performed at noon, but given California ties in so heavily to the performance, it's a little more excusable.
Now let me welcome everybody to the Wild Wild West, a state that's untouchable like Elliot Ness.
Some of the highlights include Snoop Dogg still having the most charisma of any figure in entertainment, 50 Cent looking like he's about to burst like a piñata, Mary J. Blige belting herself into exhaustion, Kendrick Lamar in his prime already fitting into a lineup of all-time greats, Eminem performing Lose Yourself while Anderson .Paak has the time of his life on drums, and the entire lineup joining for Still DRE to cap off what was a historic set.
Taking my time to perfect the beat, and I still got love for the streets. It's the DRE.
This show is significantly better if you slot into the age demographic that grew up with these songs, and there are spots where some more energy would really take this thing into the stratosphere. But as a love letter to rap music, it accomplishes everything that it sets out to do. With the NFL being the most sterile corporate behemoth possible, there were naturally rumored clashes with the performers, but hopefully this show continues to move the dial because hip-hop being considered too controversial for mainstream audiences, like most of these artists have dealt with their entire career, is just a brain-dead take at this point. So we'll finalize our tier list by placing Dr. Dre and company in the A tier. Alright, there it is, the official tier list of every halftime show from 89 to 22, with a few that rest outside the fold for one reason or another. Obviously, as we've progressed through the 2010s, there's been a very definite upgrade in the quality performances compared to where we started out, but there have been standouts from every era of the show's history. You just have to know where to look. This little project was a lot of fun though, so I plan to add on to this video as new shows take place each year. Just check for new links in the description, and you'll probably want to hit the subscribe button while you're down there just to be safe. You'll also find my Patreon, which is relaunching with this video. All my new uploads will be there sponsor-free, and I'll be doing some bonus content as well, so don't feel obligated, but it is an option to further support this channel if you want to. And that about wraps it up, I think. If you're still here, I'd like to thank you for coming along with me on this trip through halftime show history. I hope my opinions didn't make you too mad, but if they did, just know that they are final.